Listen carefully. Mossad and Israeli intelligence leadership. Every foreign spy agency that thinks Africa is playground for your operations. Mossad, you sent a double agent to Burkina Faso, a sophisticated operative trained infiltrator, a professional spy with years of experience. You sent him to penetrate my government, to compromise my security services, and what happened next went public. What happened to your double agent arrest went public. And that public exposure just destroyed your entire African intelligence network. Let me explain what happened. What has every Mossad station chief in emergency damage control right now? You sent David Cohen to Burkina Faso 3 years ago. Not his real name, the identity he was using. The cover you created for him, Israeli businessman supposedly investing in African agriculture, technology entrepreneur allegedly developing irrigation systems, humanitarian worker ostensibly helping rural communities. That was his cover, his facade, his deception. But actually Mossad operative, actually intelligence officer, professional spy. You sent him 3 years ago to build network. He succeeded initially, built impressive cover, established successful business, developed extensive contacts, gained access to government officials, penetrated security circles, recruited local agents, gathered valuable intelligence, conducted effective operations. For 3 years, for 36 months, for over 1,000 days, he operated successfully. You thought he was secure. You believed he was safe. You were completely wrong, catastrophically wrong. I knew about him from the beginning. From day one. From the moment he arrived. I knew David Cohen was Mossad. Knew his business was cover. His investments were facade. His humanitarian work was deception. I knew everything. And I let him operate, build his network, recruit his agents, let him gather his intelligence, assume he was undetected. For 3 years, I let him operate, while I watched, documented, while I gathered evidence. David Cohen arrived in Burkina Faso in January 2022, arrived with perfect cover, with legitimate business credentials, with substantial investment capital, with impressive technology portfolio, with convincing humanitarian mission, perfect cover that took you years to build, that cost you millions to establish, that required extensive preparation to create. He arrived with Israeli passport, with business visa, with investment authorization, with all proper documentation, all legitimate, all legal, all approved, arrived and began building his operation. His cover was agricultural technology company called Agritech Solutions Africa, company supposedly developing advanced irrigation systems for African farmers, company with office in Ouagadougou, with staff of 20 employees, with operational budget of millions, with investment portfolio across West Africa, company that seemed legitimate, that appeared successful, that looked genuine, but was actually Mossad front, actually intelligence operation, actually spy network, company that existed only to provide cover, to enable operations, to facilitate espionage. The company conducted real business. That was the sophistication. That was the deception. That was the cover. Real business that generated real revenue. That employed real people. That delivered real products. That served real customers. Real business that made the cover believable. That made the operation sustainable. That made the deception effective. Agricultural technology that actually worked. Irrigation systems that actually functioned. Products that actually helped farmers. Real business that was also perfect cover for intelligence operations. David Cohen played his role perfectly. Successful businessman, technology entrepreneur, humanitarian worker. He attended business conferences. He met government officials. He joined social clubs. He participated in community events. He donated to charities. He sponsored development projects. He built relationships. He gained trust. He established credibility. He created access. Perfect role. Perfect performance. Perfect deception. Role that gave him access to people he needed to recruit. Performance that earned him trust he needed to exploit. Deception that created opportunities he needed to gather intelligence. He recruited his first agent within 6 months, local government official with access to sensitive information, official who needed money, who had financial problems, who was vulnerable to recruitment. David Cohen identified him, approached him carefully, developed relationship gradually, offered assistance subtly, provided money discreetly, recruited him successfully. First agent who provided valuable intelligence. who gave access to government documents, who revealed policy discussions, who exposed security information, first agent who was beginning of network, beginning of operation, beginning of success. He expanded his network systematically, recruited second agent in month 9, third agent in month 12, fourth agent in month 15, fifth agent in month 18, systematic recruitment, careful expansion, gradual growth, network that eventually included 12 agents, 12 people providing intelligence, 12 sources giving information, 12 assets enabling operations, network spanning government ministries, military services, security agencies, police departments, business community, civil society, comprehensive network, effective network, valuable network. He gathered extensive intelligence about Burkina Faso government policies, about military capabilities, about security operations, about political developments, about economic plans, about social movements, about everything. Intelligence that he transmitted to Tel Aviv, that he reported to Mossad headquarters, that he provided to Israeli government, intelligence that served Israeli interests, that supported Israeli policies, that advanced Israeli objectives, extensive intelligence gathered over 3 years, transmitted regularly, reported systematically, provided continuously. He conducted active operations, not just intelligence gathering, active operations. Operations to influence Burkina Faso policies, to shape government decisions, to manipulate political developments, to control security operations, operations that served Israeli interests, that advanced Israeli objectives, that protected Israeli concerns, active operations that interfered with our sovereignty, that violated our independence, that compromised our security. Operations conducted for 3 years, successfully, effectively, undetected, or so he thought. I knew about David Cohen from the beginning, from the moment he applied for business visa, from the day he submitted investment application, from the hour he requested operational authorization. I knew. My intelligence services identified him, recognized his Mossad background, detected his intelligence training, discovered his operational history, identified him immediately, completely, accurately, identified him and reported to me, reported his arrival, reported his cover, reported his mission, reported everything. My intelligence services are more capable than you assumed, more sophisticated than you believed, more effective than you imagined. You assumed African intelligence is primitive, is unsophisticated, is ineffective. You were wrong. My services identified your operative, penetrated your operation, monitored your activities, documented your crimes for 3 years. While you thought you were succeeding, while you believed you were secure, while you assumed you were undetected, my services were watching, were monitoring, were documenting, were building case against your operative, against your operation, against your interference. We identified David Cohen through multiple methods, through background investigation that revealed inconsistencies in his history, through financial analysis that exposed suspicious funding sources, through surveillance that detected intelligence tradecraft, through technical monitoring that intercepted operational communications, through human intelligence that reported suspicious activities, through comprehensive investigation that proved his Mossad connections, identified him through professional intelligence work, through systematic investigation, through thorough analysis, through competent security services. We monitored his activities continuously, from day one, from his arrival, from his first operation, monitored his meetings, his communications, his travels, his contacts, his recruitments, his intelligence gathering, his operational activities, everything, monitored through physical surveillance, through technical surveillance, through human sources, through comprehensive monitoring, monitored continuously, systematically, thoroughly, monitored and documented, recorded and preserved, collected and analyzed, evidence of his espionage, evidence of his operations, evidence of his crimes. We identified his agents, all 12 of them, identified them as he recruited them, knew who they were, knew what they provided, knew what they did. Identified the government official providing policy documents, the military officer revealing security information, the police commander exposing operational plans, the business executive sharing economic intelligence, the civil society leader reporting political developments. All 12 agents, identified them all, knew them all, monitored them all, while they thought they were operating secretly, while they believed they were secure, while they assumed they were undetected. We documented his intelligence gathering, every document he collected, every report he transmitted, every communication he sent, documented it all, through technical monitoring of his communications, through surveillance of his meetings, through penetration of his network, through comprehensive documentation, documented 3 years of espionage, 3 years of intelligence gathering, 3 years of operational activity, documentation that proved his crimes, that demonstrated his espionage, that validated his guilt, documentation that became evidence, that supported prosecution, that ensured conviction. We documented his operations, every operation he conducted, every policy he influenced, every decision he shaped, every development he manipulated, documented it all, through monitoring his activities, through tracking his influence, through analyzing his impact, through comprehensive documentation, documented 3 years of interference, 3 years of manipulation, 3 years of sovereignty violation, documentation that proved his operations, that demonstrated his interference, that validated his crimes. I let him operate for 3 years, deliberately, intentionally, strategically, let him build his network, let him recruit his agents, let him gather his intelligence, let him conduct his operations, for 3 years, while I watched, while I documented, while I built my case. Let him operate because I wanted complete picture, wanted comprehensive evidence, wanted total documentation, wanted to expose not just one operative, but entire network, entire operation, entire system. If I arrested him immediately, I would have caught one spy, one operative, one agent, but his network would have survived, his agents would have remained. His operation would have continued under different cover, different operative, different facade. Arresting him immediately would have been tactical victory, but strategic failure would have removed one spy, but preserved the network, would have stopped one operation, but allowed the system to continue. I didn't want tactical victory. I wanted strategic destruction, wanted to destroy the entire network, the entire operation, the entire system. I let him operate to identify all his agents, to discover everyone he recruited, to expose everyone he compromised, to reveal everyone he controlled. Let him complete his recruitment. Let him build his full network. Let him establish all his assets, so I could identify them all, so I could expose them all, so I could arrest them all, simultaneously, comprehensively, completely. Let him operate for 3 years. And in those 3 years he recruited 12 agents, 12 people I now know, 12 traitors I can now prosecute, 12 assets I can now eliminate. 3 years that gave me complete picture, complete network, complete operation. I let him operate to document all his activities, to record all his operations, to preserve all his crimes, to collect all evidence needed for prosecution. Let him gather intelligence. Let him conduct operations. Let him interfere with sovereignty. While I documented everything, while I recorded everything, while I preserved everything. 3 years of documentation. 3 years of evidence. 3 years of proof. Documentation that proves his espionage beyond doubt. Evidence that demonstrates his operations beyond question. Proof that validates his crimes beyond denial. 3 years of letting him operate. 3 years of building ironclad case. 3 years of ensuring certain conviction. I let him operate to understand Mossad methods, to learn Israeli intelligence techniques, to study foreign spy operations, to analyze intelligence tradecraft. Let him operate while I studied, while I learned, while I analyzed, while I understood. 3 years of watching professional spy work, 3 years of observing intelligence operations, 3 years of learning enemy methods. Learning that makes my security services more capable, that makes my intelligence agencies more effective, that makes my counterintelligence operations more sophisticated. 3 years of education, 3 years of learning, 3 years of capability building. I let him operate to prepare public exposure, to gather evidence for public trial, to collect proof for public revelation, to document crimes for public accountability. Let him operate while I prepared, while I gathered, while I collected, while I documented. 3 years of preparation for public exposure, for public trial, for public revelation, for public accountability. Preparation that would make exposure comprehensive, that would make trial convincing, that would make revelation undeniable, that would make accountability certain. 3 years of preparation for what happened next, for what went public. The arrest that shocked Mossad. I arrested David Cohen on January 15, 2025, exactly 3 years after his arrival, exactly 36 months after he began operations, exactly 1,095 days after he started building his network, arrested him publicly, arrested him dramatically, arrested him completely, arrested him in a way that shocked Mossad. That surprised Israeli intelligence, that stunned foreign spy agencies, public arrest that announced to world, that declared to Africa, that proclaimed to everyone. Arrest that was beginning of public exposure, beginning of public trial, beginning of public accountability. The arrest happened at his office, at Agritech Solutions Africa headquarters, at his business cover location, at 9 a.m. on working day, when office was full, when staff was present, when witnesses were abundant. Public arrest, witnessed arrest, documented arrest. My security forces surrounded the building, entered the office, announced the charges, arrested David Cohen. In front of his staff, in front of his employees, in front of everyone. Public arrest that couldn't be denied, couldn't be hidden, couldn't be concealed. Arrest witnessed by dozens. Recorded by cameras. Broadcast by media. I announced the arrest immediately, within 1 hour, before Mossad could react, before Israeli government could respond, before anyone could interfere. Announced it in press conference. Announced it on television. Announced it on radio. Announced it online. Announced that we arrested Israeli spy, that we captured Mossad operative, that we detained foreign intelligence agent. Announced his name, his cover, his mission, his crimes. Announced everything, publicly, completely, immediately. Announcement that shocked Mossad, that surprised Israel, that stunned international intelligence community. I announced we arrested his entire network, not just David Cohen, his entire network, all 12 agents, arrested simultaneously, arrested comprehensively, arrested completely. Announced that we arrested government official providing documents, military officer revealing secrets, police commander exposing operations, business executive sharing intelligence, civil society leader reporting developments. All 12 agents, arrested all of them simultaneously, in coordinated operation across Ouagadougou, coordinated operation that prevented escape. That stopped communication. That ensured capture. All 12 arrested. All 12 detained. All 12 facing prosecution. The arrest shocked Mossad because they didn't know we knew, didn't suspect we were monitoring, didn't realize we were documenting, didn't imagine we were preparing. Shocked that their sophisticated operation was compromised, that their professional operative was detected, that their entire network was exposed. Shocked that African intelligence services were capable, were sophisticated, were effective. Shocked that challenged their assumptions, that contradicted their beliefs, that destroyed their confidence. Shocked that paralyzed their response, that delayed their reaction, that prevented their interference. The arrest shocked Mossad because it was simultaneous, not just David Cohen, his entire network, all at once, all together, all simultaneously. Simultaneous arrest that prevented warning, that stopped communication, that eliminated escape. Simultaneous arrest that captured everyone, that secured everything, that preserved all evidence. Shocked that we could coordinate such operation, that we could execute such complexity, that we could achieve such success. Shock that demonstrated capability, that proved sophistication, that validated effectiveness. The arrest shocked Mossad because it was public, not quiet, not secret, not hidden, public, announced immediately, broadcast widely, transmitted everywhere. Public arrest that couldn't be denied, couldn't be concealed, couldn't be managed quietly through diplomatic channels. Public arrest that created scandal, that generated attention, that demanded accountability. Shock that we chose publicity over discretion, that we preferred exposure over quiet resolution, that we selected accountability over diplomatic convenience. Shock that changed everything, that transformed situation, that created crisis. The interrogation began immediately, same day as arrest, within hours of detention, before Mossad could interfere, before Israeli government could pressure, before anyone could prevent it. Interrogation that was thorough, that was professional, that was effective. Interrogation that revealed everything, that exposed everything, that documented everything. Interrogation conducted by my best interrogators, my most skilled officers, my most experienced professionals. Interrogation that extracted full confession, that obtained complete admission, that secured total revelation. David Cohen talked, not immediately, not easily, not quickly, but eventually, ultimately, completely. He resisted initially, denied charges, claimed innocence, maintained cover. Professional resistance, trained denial, sophisticated deception. But my interrogators were better, were more skilled, were more effective. They confronted him with evidence, showed him surveillance footage, played him recorded communications, presented him documented meetings, proved his espionage, proved his operations, proved his crimes. Evidence that couldn't be denied, couldn't be explained, couldn't be dismissed. He broke after 72 hours, 3 days of interrogation, 3 days of evidence presentation, 3 days of confrontation with undeniable proof. He broke and talked comprehensively, talked completely, talked thoroughly, confessed to being Mossad operative, admitted to espionage activities, acknowledged intelligence gathering, confirmed operational interference, confessed everything, admitted everything, acknowledged everything, confession that was recorded, that was documented, that was preserved, confession that became evidence, that supported prosecution, that ensured conviction. He revealed his entire operation, revealed how he was recruited by Mossad, how he was trained in intelligence tradecraft, how he was prepared for African deployment, how he was given his cover, how he was sent to Burkina Faso, revealed his mission objectives, his operational instructions, his intelligence requirements, his reporting procedures, his communication methods, revealed everything about his operation, everything about his mission, everything about his activities, revelation that exposed Mossad methods, that demonstrated Israeli intelligence techniques, that validated foreign spy operations. He identified his handlers, named his Mossad contacts, identified his control officers, named his headquarters supervisors, identified everyone in his chain of command, named Mossad officers in Tel Aviv, identified intelligence officials in Israeli government, named everyone involved in his operation, everyone who directed his activities, everyone who received his intelligence, everyone who benefited from his espionage, identification that exposed Mossad personnel, that revealed intelligence officers, that documented command structure, identification that I made public, that I announced internationally, that I exposed globally. He revealed Mossad's broader African operations, revealed that he wasn't only operative, wasn't only operation, wasn't only network, revealed that Mossad operates across Africa, in multiple countries, through multiple operatives, with multiple networks, revealed operations in Mali, in Niger, in Chad, in Nigeria, in Ivory Coast, in Ghana, in Senegal, across West Africa, across entire continent, revealed scope of Israeli intelligence operations in Africa, scale of Mossad activities on continent, extent of foreign spy networks in African nations, revelation that exposed everything, that documented everything, that proved everything. He revealed Mossad's operational objectives, revealed their gathering intelligence on African governments, on African militaries, on African security services, on African political developments, on African economic plans, on African resource wealth, on everything. Revealed their conducting operations to influence African policies, to shape African decisions, to manipulate African developments, to control African outcomes, operations that serve Israeli interests, that advance Israeli objectives, that protect Israeli concerns, operations that interfere with African sovereignty, that violate African independence, that compromise African security. The trial began 3 weeks after arrest. Public trial, open trial, transparent trial, trial broadcast on television, streamed online, reported by media, trial that entire Africa watched. That entire world observed, that everyone witnessed, trial that exposed everything publicly, that revealed everything openly, that documented everything transparently, trial that was not secret, not closed, not hidden. Public trial that ensured accountability, that guaranteed transparency, that demanded justice. The charges were comprehensive: espionage against Burkina Faso, intelligence gathering for foreign power, recruiting agents for foreign intelligence service, conducting operations against national security, interfering with national sovereignty, violating state security laws, comprehensive charges that covered all his crimes, all his activities, all his operations, charges supported by evidence, proven by documentation, validated by confession, charges that couldn't be dismissed, couldn't be denied, couldn't be avoided. The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage showing his meetings with agents, recorded communications revealing his intelligence transmissions, documented meetings proving his operational activities, financial records demonstrating his payment to agents, technical evidence validating his espionage, his own confession admitting everything, overwhelming evidence presented systematically, presented comprehensively, presented convincingly, evidence that proved every charge, that demonstrated every crime, that validated every accusation, evidence that made conviction certain, that made guilt undeniable, that made accountability inevitable. The prosecution was thorough. My prosecutors presented every piece of evidence, called every witness, documented every crime, proved every charge. Thorough prosecution that left no doubt. That eliminated all questions, that ensured conviction. Prosecution that exposed not just David Cohen's crimes, but Mossad's operations, but Israeli intelligence activities, but foreign spy networks in Africa. Prosecution that was educational, that was revealing, that was exposing. Prosecution that taught Africa about intelligence threats, about spy operations, about foreign interference. The defense was futile. David Cohen's lawyers tried to challenge evidence, tried to question procedures, tried to create doubt, tried everything, but futilely, because evidence was overwhelming, because procedures were proper, because guilt was undeniable. Defense that couldn't overcome confession, couldn't dismiss documentation, couldn't explain surveillance footage, couldn't justify espionage. Defense that failed completely, that failed publicly, that failed obviously. Failure that confirmed guilt, that validated charges, that ensured conviction. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all charges, guilty of espionage, guilty of intelligence gathering, guilty of agent recruitment, guilty of security violations, guilty of sovereignty interference, guilty on everything. Unanimous verdict delivered publicly, announced openly, broadcast widely, verdict that confirmed what everyone knew, that validated what evidence proved, that ensured what justice demanded. Verdict that was not surprising, not controversial, not questionable. Obvious verdict, certain verdict, just verdict. The sentence was severe. 25 years imprisonment. Maximum sentence under our law. Severe sentence that reflected seriousness of crimes, that demonstrated gravity of espionage, that validated importance of sovereignty. Sentence that sent message to Mossad, to Israeli intelligence, to all foreign spy agencies, message that espionage has consequences, that interference faces punishment, that sovereignty violations demand accountability, severe sentence that was justified, that was deserved, that was necessary. I made everything public, not just arrest, not just trial, everything. Made public the evidence, the confession, the revelation, the exposure, everything that demonstrated Mossad operations, everything that proved Israeli intelligence activities, everything that exposed foreign spy networks, made it public through press conferences, through published documents, through broadcast testimony, through online releases, made everything public so Africa could see, so world could know, so everyone could understand. I published David Cohen's confession, published complete transcript, published full admission, published total revelation, published his confession about being Mossad operative, about conducting espionage, about gathering intelligence, about recruiting agents, about interfering with sovereignty, published everything he confessed, everything he admitted, everything he revealed, published it online, made it downloadable, made it accessible, made it available to everyone, to every journalist, to every researcher, to every citizen, published confession that proved everything, that demonstrated everything, that exposed everything. I published the evidence, published surveillance footage, published recorded communications, published documented meetings, published financial records, published technical evidence, published everything that proved his espionage, everything that demonstrated his operations, everything that validated his crimes, published it all online, made it all available, made it all accessible, published evidence that anyone could examine, that anyone could verify, that anyone could analyze, evidence that proved beyond doubt, that demonstrated beyond question, that validated beyond denial. I published the list of Mossad officers, published names of his handlers, published identities of his control officers, published names of headquarters supervisors, published everyone in his chain of command, published Mossad personnel in Tel Aviv, published intelligence officials in Israeli government, published everyone involved in his operation, published their names, their positions, their roles, their responsibilities, published everything that exposed Mossad personnel, that revealed intelligence officers, that documented command structure, published it internationally, made it global news, made it worldwide scandal. I published the revelation about broader operations, published information about Mossad operations across Africa, published details about multiple operatives, published information about multiple networks, published revelations about operations in Mali, in Niger, in Chad, in Nigeria, in Ivory Coast, in Ghana, in Senegal, published everything about Israeli intelligence operations in Africa, about Mossad activities on continent, about foreign spy networks in African nations, published it so African leaders could know, so African governments could act, so African people could demand accountability. The public exposure destroyed Mossad's African network, destroyed it completely, destroyed it permanently, destroyed it irreversibly. Exposure that forced evacuation of operatives, that necessitated closure of operations, that required abandonment of networks. Exposure that compromised every operation, that endangered every operative, that exposed every network. Destruction that was comprehensive, that was total, that was permanent. Destruction of 15 years of intelligence work, destruction of millions in investment, destruction of sophisticated operations, all destroyed by public exposure, all eliminated by public revelation, all ended by public accountability. Listen to me, African leaders. Listen to every president who thinks their country is secure. Listen to every government that believes they're protected. Listen to every nation that assumes they're safe. Mossad operates in your countries. Israeli intelligence conducts operations on your soil. Foreign spies gather intelligence in your capitals. They're there. They're operating. They're gathering. They're interfering. Just like they were in Burkina Faso. Just like David Cohen was operating. Just like his network was functioning. You need to investigate. Need to search for Israeli operatives in your countries. Need to look for Mossad agents in your governments. Need to find foreign spies in your institutions. Investigate suspicious foreign businessmen. Investigate questionable technology entrepreneurs. Investigate dubious humanitarian workers. Investigate everyone who seems too interested, too helpful, too generous, too perfect. Investigate them because they might be spies, might be operatives, might be intelligence agents, just like David Cohen was, just like his cover was, just like his operation was. You need to monitor, need to watch foreign activities in your countries, need to observe suspicious behaviors, need to track questionable contacts, monitor through surveillance, through technical monitoring, through human intelligence, through comprehensive observation. Monitor continuously, monitor systematically, monitor thoroughly. Monitor like I monitored David Cohen, like I watched his activities, like I documented his operations. Monitor so you can detect, so you can identify, so you can expose. You need to document, need to preserve evidence of foreign operations, need to record proof of intelligence activities, need to collect documentation of spy networks, document through surveillance footage, through recorded communications, through preserved meetings, through saved documents, through comprehensive collection, document systematically, document thoroughly, document comprehensively. Document like I documented David Cohen, like I preserved his evidence, like I built my case. Document so you can prosecute, so you can convict, so you can ensure accountability. You need to expose, need to make public the foreign operations, need to reveal the intelligence activities, need to announce the spy networks, expose through press conferences, through published documents, through broadcast trials, through online releases, through public accountability, expose publicly, expose openly, expose transparently, expose like I exposed David Cohen, like I revealed his operation, like I made everything public. Expose so Africa can know, so world can see, so everyone can understand. You need to prosecute, need to try the foreign spies, need to convict the intelligence operatives, need to sentence the sovereignty violators, prosecute through proper legal procedures, through fair trials, through just processes, through transparent systems, prosecute thoroughly, prosecute publicly, prosecute effectively, prosecute like I prosecuted David Cohen, like I tried his case, like I ensured his conviction, prosecute so justice is served, so accountability is achieved, so sovereignty is protected. This exposure damages Israeli-African relations, damages them significantly, damages them permanently, damages them deservedly. Relations built on deception, relations maintained through espionage, relations advanced by interference. Those relations are damaged, are compromised, are destroyed, damaged by exposure of Israeli intelligence operations, compromised by revelation of Mossad activities, destroyed by documentation of spy networks, damage that is deserved, that is justified, that is necessary. Israel presents itself as friend of Africa, as partner in development, as supporter of progress, as ally in security, presents itself positively, presents itself helpfully, presents itself benevolently. But reality is different. Reality is espionage. Reality is intelligence gathering. Reality is operational interference. Reality is sovereignty violation. Reality that I exposed, that I revealed, that I documented. Reality that contradicts presentation, that exposes deception, that reveals truth. Israel conducts extensive intelligence operations in Africa, operations gathering information about African governments, about African militaries, about African resources, about African policies, about African developments, about everything. Operations that serve Israeli interests, that advance Israeli objectives, that protect Israeli concerns. Operations that violate African sovereignty, that compromise African security, that interfere with African independence. Extensive operations that I exposed, that I revealed, that I documented. Israel uses various covers for operations. Business covers like David Cohen used. Technology covers like Agri-Tech Solutions. Humanitarian covers like development projects. Diplomatic covers like embassy personnel. Security covers like training programs, various covers that conceal operations, that hide operatives, that enable espionage, covers that I exposed, that I revealed, that I documented. Covers that no longer work, that no longer deceive, that no longer protect. African nations need to reconsider relations with Israel, need to question Israeli presence, need to scrutinize Israeli activities, need to investigate Israeli operations, need to monitor Israeli personnel. Need to restrict Israeli access, reconsider relations based on reality, based on exposed operations, based on documented espionage, based on proven interference, reconsider relations to protect sovereignty, to ensure security, to maintain independence, reconsider like Burkina Faso reconsidered, like we questioned, like we investigated, like we exposed. Some African nations will reconsider, will question Israeli presence, will investigate Israeli activities, will restrict Israeli access, will protect their sovereignty, will ensure their security, will maintain their independence. Nations that learn from Burkina Faso experience, that understand the exposure, that recognize the threat, nations that will act, that will investigate, that will protect themselves. Some nations will reconsider, others will continue, others will ignore, others will deny, but some will act. And that's beginning, that's start, that's change. This exposure changes intelligence operations in Africa, changes them significantly, changes them permanently, changes them fundamentally, changes how foreign intelligence agencies operate on continent, changes how they conduct operations, changes how they maintain cover, changes how they manage risk, changes everything, changed by public exposure, changed by public trial, changed by public accountability, changed by what happened to David Cohen, changed by what went public. Foreign intelligence agencies assumed Africa was easy target, assumed African security was weak, assumed African intelligence was primitive, assumed African counterintelligence was ineffective, assumed they could operate freely, could gather intelligence easily, could conduct operations safely, could maintain networks securely. Those assumptions are destroyed by my exposure. Destroyed by my documentation, destroyed by my prosecution, destroyed by what happened to David Cohen, destroyed by what went public. Foreign intelligence agencies now know African security is capable, know African intelligence is sophisticated, know African counterintelligence is effective, know African governments are vigilant, know they can be detected, know they can be monitored, know they can be exposed, know they can be prosecuted, know from what happened in Burkina Faso, know from what happened to David Cohen, know from what went public, knowledge that changes everything, that increases caution, that raises risk, that reduces operations. Foreign intelligence agencies must now operate more carefully, must maintain better cover, must conduct more secure operations, must manage greater risk, must accept higher costs, must reduce their activities, must limit their operations, must restrict their networks, must operate more carefully because Africa is watching, because African security is capable, because African intelligence is sophisticated, because African counterintelligence is effective, must operate more carefully or face what David Cohen faced, face exposure, face prosecution, face conviction, face imprisonment. This exposure benefits African security, benefits African sovereignty, benefits African independence, benefits African dignity, benefits by deterring foreign intelligence operations, by reducing espionage activities, by limiting interference operations, by protecting sovereignty, benefits that are significant, that are valuable, that are important, benefits that protect African nations, that secure African governments, that defend African interests, benefits that justify the exposure, that validate the prosecution, that prove the necessity of public accountability. This case is about more than one spy, more than one operation, more than one network. This case is about African sovereignty, about African independence, about African dignity, about African self-determination, about African security. This case is about whether African nations control their own affairs, whether African governments manage their own security, whether African people determine their own futures. This case is about sovereignty, about independence, about freedom. Foreign intelligence operations violate African sovereignty, violate it systematically, violate it continuously, violate it deliberately. Operations that gather intelligence without permission, that recruit agents without authorization, that conduct activities without consent, operations that interfere with policies, that manipulate decisions, that control outcomes, operations that violate sovereignty, that compromise independence, that undermine security, that threaten dignity, that challenge self-determination, violations that must be stopped, that must be exposed, that must be prosecuted. This prosecution defends African sovereignty, defends it actively, defends it publicly, defends it effectively. Prosecution that holds foreign spy accountable, that ensures justice for sovereignty violation, that demands respect for independence, that protects security, that upholds dignity, that validates self-determination, defense that is necessary, that is justified, that is important. Defense that sends message to foreign intelligence agencies, to spy networks, to everyone. Message that African sovereignty matters, that violations have consequences, that accountability is real. This exposure empowers African nations, empowers them to investigate, to detect, to expose, to prosecute, to defend their sovereignty, empowers by demonstrating capability, by proving effectiveness, by showing success, by validating methods, empowers African security services, African intelligence agencies, African counterintelligence operations, African governments, empowers them to act, to protect, to defend, to ensure sovereignty, empowerment that is valuable, that is important, that is transformative. This case establishes precedent for public exposure of foreign spies, precedent for public trial of intelligence operatives, precedent for public accountability for sovereignty violations, precedent that other African nations can follow, that other African governments can implement, that other African leaders can use, precedent that changes norms, that establishes standards, that creates expectations, precedent that strengthens African sovereignty, that protects African independence, that defends African security. We are Burkina Faso. We exposed Mossad operative. We revealed Israeli intelligence operation. We documented foreign spy network. We prosecuted sovereignty violation. We ensured public accountability. We are Burkina Faso, not the largest African nation, not the wealthiest African country, not the most powerful African state, but the nation that exposed the truth, the country that revealed the operation, the state that documented the crime, the government that prosecuted the violation, the people that demanded accountability. We are Burkina Faso, small nation, big courage, limited resources, unlimited determination, modest security services, immense capability. We are Burkina Faso. And we just exposed what Mossad tried to hide for 3 years. Just revealed what Israeli intelligence tried to conceal. Just documented what foreign spies tried to protect. Just prosecuted what sovereignty violators tried to escape. Just ensured accountability that everyone thought was impossible. We are Burkina Faso, and this identity defines us now more than ever before. Defines us not by our size, but by our courage. Not by our wealth, but by our determination. Not by our power, but by our principles. Not by our resources, but by our resolve. We are Burkina Faso, the nation that stood up to one of the world's most sophisticated intelligence agencies. The country that exposed one of the most professional spy networks. The government that prosecuted one of the most capable operatives. The people that demanded accountability from one of the most powerful nations. We are Burkina Faso, and our actions have redefined what it means to be a small African nation in the 21st century. Small nation. We acknowledge this reality without shame, without embarrassment, without apology. Small nation, by geographic measures. Our territory is not vast like Algeria, not expansive like Democratic Republic of Congo, not enormous like Sudan. Small territory, limited land, modest space, small nation by demographic statistics. Our population is not large like Nigeria, not numerous like Ethiopia, not substantial like Egypt. Small population, limited people, modest numbers, small nation by economic indicators. Our GDP is not massive like South Africa, not substantial like Egypt, not significant like Nigeria. Small economy, limited wealth, modest resources. But smallness is not weakness. Size is not strength. Scale is not significance. Small nations can achieve great things, can accomplish remarkable feats, can make enormous impacts, can change continental trajectories, can inspire global movements, can challenge powerful forces. Small nations throughout history have demonstrated this truth, have proven this reality, have validated this principle. Singapore is small but prosperous. Israel is small but powerful. Switzerland is small but influential. Cuba is small but defiant. Vietnam is small but victorious. Small nations that achieved greatness, that accomplished significance, that made impact. We are a small nation, but we are achieving greatness, accomplishing significance, making impact. Big courage. That is what defines us. That is what distinguishes us. That is what empowers us. Courage to confront Mossad. Courage to expose Israeli intelligence. Courage to prosecute foreign spies. Courage to demand accountability from powerful nation. Courage to do what others feared, what others avoided, what others considered impossible. Big courage, not reckless bravery, not foolish boldness, not irrational fearlessness, but calculated courage. Informed bravery, principled boldness, courage based on understanding of what we faced, based on knowledge of what we risked, based on awareness of what we challenged, but courage nonetheless. Courage that accepted risks, courage that faced dangers, courage that confronted threats. Big courage to let David Cohen operate for 3 years, to watch him build his network, to observe him recruit his agents, to monitor him, gather intelligence, to document him, conduct operations. Courage to wait, to be patient, to build comprehensive case. Courage that resisted temptation to arrest immediately, that overcame pressure to act quickly, that maintained discipline to wait strategically. Big courage to arrest him publicly, to announce it immediately, to broadcast it widely, to make it international scandal. Courage that rejected quiet diplomacy, that refused private resolution, that chose public accountability. Big courage to prosecute him openly, to try him transparently, to convict him publicly. Courage that accepted international pressure, that faced diplomatic consequences, that endured political costs. Big courage to expose everything, to publish all evidence, to release all documentation, to reveal all proof. Courage to name Mossad officers, to identify Israeli intelligence officials, to expose command structures. Courage that made powerful enemies, that created diplomatic problems, that generated international tensions, but courage that was necessary, that was justified, that was right. Big courage that inspires others, that encourages resistance, that motivates sovereignty protection, that validates independence, defense. Big courage that changes what's possible, that expands what's achievable, That transforms what's conceivable. Limited resources. We acknowledge this constraint without despair, without defeatism, without surrender. Limited resources by every measure, limited financial resources. Our budget is not large. Our reserves are not substantial. Our wealth is not significant. Limited economic resources. Our industries are not extensive. Our production is not massive. Our capacity is not enormous. Limited military resources. Our armed forces are not large. Our equipment is not advanced. Our capabilities are not comprehensive. Limited technological resources. Our systems are not sophisticated. Our infrastructure is not modern. Our technology is not cutting edge. But limited resources do not mean limited capability, do not mean limited effectiveness, do not mean limited achievement. Resources are important but not determinative. Wealth matters but is not decisive. Capacity helps but is not essential. What matters more is how resources are used, how they are deployed, how they are leveraged. What matters more is intelligence, is strategy, is determination, is courage, is commitment. We have limited resources, but we use them wisely, use them strategically, use them effectively, use them to maximum impact. Limited resources that we maximize through intelligence, through smart strategy, through effective planning, through professional execution. Limited resources that we leveraged through focus, through prioritization, through concentration, through efficiency. Limited resources that we amplified through determination, through commitment, through persistence, through courage. Limited resources that proved sufficient, that proved adequate, that proved enough. Sufficient to detect David Cohen. Adequate to monitor his operations, enough to document his crimes, sufficient to arrest his network, adequate to prosecute his case, enough to ensure conviction. Limited resources that we supplemented through capability, through professional services, through skilled personnel, through effective systems, through smart procedures. Limited resources that we enhanced through partnerships, through cooperation, through collaboration, through coordination. Limited resources that we optimize through innovation, through creativity, through adaptation, through improvement. Limited resources that achieved unlimited results, that accomplished remarkable outcomes, that generated significant impact, that produced transformative change. Unlimited determination, that is our strength, that is our power, that is our advantage. Determination that knows no limits, that accepts no constraints, that recognizes no boundaries. Unlimited determination to protect sovereignty, to defend independence, to ensure security, to maintain dignity, to preserve freedom. Determination that is absolute, that is total, that is complete. Determination that cannot be bought, cannot be intimidated, cannot be discouraged, cannot be defeated, cannot be stopped. Unlimited determination to detect foreign spies, to expose intelligence operations, to prosecute sovereignty violations, to demand accountability, to ensure justice. Determination that persisted for 3 years, that maintained surveillance continuously, that documented operations systematically, that built case comprehensively, that prepared prosecution thoroughly. Determination that never wavered, never weakened, never faltered, never failed. Determination that saw mission through, that completed objective, that achieved goal. Unlimited determination that comes from our history, from our struggle for independence, from our resistance to colonialism, from our fight against neocolonialism, from our defense of sovereignty. History that taught us determination, that showed us persistence, that demonstrated commitment, that validated courage. History of Thomas Sankara, who was determined to transform Burkina Faso, who was committed to African dignity, who was dedicated to sovereignty. History that inspires us, that motivates us, that guides us, that empowers us. Unlimited determination that comes from our values, from our belief in sovereignty, from our commitment to independence, from our dedication to dignity, from our devotion to freedom. Values that are non-negotiable, that are fundamental, that are essential, that are absolute. Values that we will defend, that we will protect, that we will preserve, that we will never surrender, never compromise, never abandon. Values that give us determination, that provide us strength, that grant us courage, that ensure us persistence. Unlimited determination that comes from our people, from Burkinabe citizens who value sovereignty, who cherish independence, who demand dignity, who require freedom, people who support our actions, who endorse our decisions, who validate our choices, who strengthen our resolve, people who give us determination, who provide us courage, who grant us strength, who ensure us persistence, people for whom we act, for whom we fight, for whom we sacrifice, for whom we persevere. Modest security services. We acknowledge this reality without shame, without embarrassment, without apology. Modest security services by international standards, not as large as American CIA, not as sophisticated as Israeli Mossad, not as extensive as British MI6, not as powerful as Russian FSB, not as capable as Chinese MSS. Modest services, limited personnel, constrained budgets, basic equipment, simple systems, modest by comparison to major intelligence agencies, modest by measure of global standards, modest by evaluation of international norms. But modest does not mean ineffective, does not mean incapable, does not mean inadequate. Modest means appropriate to our needs, suitable to our circumstances, sufficient for our requirements. Modest security services that are professional, that are competent, that are effective, that are capable. Services staffed by dedicated personnel, by trained officers, by skilled analysts, by committed professionals. Services that may be modest in size but are immense in capability, that may be limited in resources but are unlimited in determination, that may be constrained in budget but are comprehensive in effectiveness. Modest security services that detected David Cohen, that identified him immediately, that recognized his Mossad connections, that understood his operational mission. Services that may be modest but were capable of detection, that may be limited but were effective in identification, that may be constrained but were successful in recognition. Modest security services that monitored David Cohen, that surveilled him continuously, that observed him systematically, that documented him comprehensively. Services that may be modest but were capable of surveillance, that may be limited but were effective in monitoring, that may be constrained but were successful in documentation. Modest security services that arrested David Cohen's network, that detained all 12 agents, that captured entire operation, that secured all evidence. Services that may be modest but were capable of arrest, that may be limited but were effective in detention, that may be constrained but were successful in capture. Modest security services that interrogated David Cohen, that extracted his confession, that obtained his admission, that secured his revelation. Services that may be modest but were capable of interrogation, that may be limited but were effective in extraction, that may be constrained but were successful in confession. Modest security services that supported prosecution, that provided evidence, that presented testimony, that ensured conviction. Services that may be modest but were capable of support, that may be limited but were effective in provision, that may be constrained but were successful in presentation. Modest security services that proved their worth, that demonstrated their capability, that validated their effectiveness, that justified their existence. Services that may be modest in appearance but are immense in achievement. Immense capability. That is what we demonstrated. That is what we proved. That is what we validated. Capability that exceeded expectations, that surpassed assumptions, that contradicted beliefs. Immense capability despite modest resources, despite limited personnel, despite constrained budgets, despite basic equipment, despite simple systems. Capability that was professional, that was sophisticated, that was effective, that was successful. Capability that detected foreign spy, that monitored intelligence operation, that documented espionage network, that arrested all operatives, that prosecuted successfully, that ensured conviction. Immense capability that comes from professionalism, from training, from dedication, from commitment, from determination, professionalism of our security personnel, training of our intelligence officers, dedication of our counterintelligence agents, commitment of our analysts, determination of our leadership, professionalism that compensates for limited resources, training that overcomes modest budgets, dedication that transcends basic equipment, commitment that surpasses simple systems, determination that achieves remarkable results, immense capability that comes from intelligence, from smart strategy, from effective planning, from professional execution, intelligence in how we approach the problem, strategy in how we address the threat, planning in how we prepared the response, execution in how we implemented the solution, intelligence that maximized limited resources. Everything that David Cohen did, everything that his network accomplished, everything that Mossad conducted, exposed it publicly, exposed it completely, exposed it thoroughly, exposed it undeniably. Exposure that destroyed 3 years of work, that eliminated 3 years of investment, that ended 3 years of operations. Exposure that Mossad tried to prevent, that Israeli intelligence tried to avoid, that foreign spies tried to escape. But exposure that happened anyway, that succeeded completely, that achieved totally. Just revealed what Israeli intelligence tried to conceal their operations in Burkina Faso, tried to conceal their network across West Africa, tried to conceal their espionage activities, tried to conceal their sovereignty violations, tried to conceal through sophisticated covers, through professional tradecraft, through careful security, through systematic protection, tried to conceal using business facades, using technology covers, using humanitarian disguises, using every concealment method, every deception technique, every protection procedure. But we revealed it, revealed all their operations, revealed all their networks, revealed all their activities, revealed all their violations, revealed everything they tried to conceal, everything they tried to hide, everything they tried to protect, revealed it through investigation, through surveillance, through monitoring, through documentation, revealed it through professional intelligence work, through systematic counterintelligence, through effective security operations, revealed it publicly, revealed it completely, revealed it thoroughly, revealed it undeniably, revelation that Israeli intelligence tried to prevent, that they tried to avoid, that they tried to stop, but revelation that happened anyway, that succeeded completely, that achieved totally. Just documented what foreign spies tried to protect their identities, tried to protect their operations, tried to protect their networks, tried to protect their crimes, tried to protect through operational security, through careful tradecraft, through professional procedures, through systematic protocols, tried to protect using false identities, using cover stories, using deception techniques, using security measures, tried to protect everything, every aspect of operations, every element of networks, every detail of activities. But we documented it, documented all their identities, documented all their operations, documented all their networks, documented all their crimes, documented everything they tried to protect, everything they tried to hide, everything they tried to secure, documented through surveillance footage, through recorded communications, through preserved documents, through collected evidence, documented through systematic collection, through comprehensive preservation, through professional analysis, documented thoroughly, documented completely, documented undeniably. Documentation that foreign spies tried to prevent, that they tried to avoid, that they tried to stop, but documentation that happened anyway, that succeeded completely, that achieved totally. Just prosecuted what sovereignty violators tried to escape accountability, tried to escape justice, tried to escape consequences, tried to escape prosecution, tried to escape through diplomatic immunity, through political pressure, through international influence, through powerful connections, tried to escape using every method, every technique, every procedure, every mechanism, tried to escape because they thought they were untouchable, because they believed they were protected, because they assumed they were immune. But we prosecuted them, prosecuted David Cohen, prosecuted his agents, prosecuted his network, prosecuted everyone involved, prosecuted what sovereignty violators tried to escape, what they tried to avoid, what they tried to prevent, prosecuted through legal procedures, through court proceedings, through public trials, through transparent processes, prosecuted professionally, prosecuted effectively, prosecuted successfully, prosecution that sovereignty violators tried to escape, that they tried to avoid, that they tried to prevent, but prosecution that happened anyway, that succeeded completely, that achieved totally. Just ensured accountability that everyone thought was impossible, thought impossible because we're small nation, because we're African country, because we're developing economy, because we're modest power. Thought impossible because Mossad is sophisticated agency, because Israeli intelligence is professional service, because foreign spies are capable operatives, thought impossible because of power imbalance, because of resource disparity, because of capability difference. Everyone thought accountability was impossible. Everyone believed we couldn't achieve it. Everyone assumed we wouldn't succeed. But we ensured accountability, ensured it through exposure, through revelation, through documentation, through prosecution, through conviction, ensured accountability that everyone thought impossible, that everyone believed unachievable, that everyone assumed unrealistic, ensured it through determination, through courage, through commitment, through professionalism, through capability, ensured accountability completely, ensured accountability thoroughly, ensured accountability permanently, accountability that proves nothing is impossible, that demonstrates everything is achievable, that validates all is realistic. When determination is unlimited, when courage is sufficient, when commitment is absolute. We have our sovereignty, not violated by foreign spies, not compromised by intelligence operations, not undermined by espionage networks, our sovereignty that we fought for, that we died for, that we protect, our sovereignty that belongs to our people, that serves our interests, that secures our future, our sovereignty that foreign agencies tried to violate, that intelligence services tried to compromise, that spy networks tried to undermine. We have our sovereignty, we're keeping our sovereignty, we're protecting our sovereignty. We have our sovereignty and it is complete. It is total. It is absolute. It is comprehensive. It is permanent. Sovereignty over our territory, over our people, over our resources, over our policies, over our decisions, over our future. Sovereignty that is real, that is genuine, that is actual, not theoretical sovereignty, not nominal sovereignty, not partial sovereignty. Real sovereignty, complete sovereignty, total sovereignty, sovereignty that we exercise daily, that we implement continuously, that we maintain constantly, that we defend perpetually, not violated by foreign spies, not by David Cohen, not by his network, not by Mossad operatives, not by any foreign intelligence agents, not violated despite their presence, despite their operations, despite their activities, despite their efforts, despite their attempts, not violated because we detected them, because we monitored them, because we controlled them, because we arrested them, because we prosecuted them. Our sovereignty remains unviolated, remains pure, remains intact, remains complete, not violated by foreign spies because we protected it, because we defended it, because we preserved it, not violated despite David Cohen operating for 3 years, despite him building network, despite him recruiting agents, despite him gathering intelligence, despite him conducting operations, not violated because we knew about him, because we watched him, because we documented him, because we controlled the situation, because we determined the outcome, not violated because his operations didn't succeed in compromising our sovereignty, didn't succeed in undermining our independence, didn't succeed in controlling our policies, didn't succeed in determining our decisions. His operations failed to violate our sovereignty, failed completely, failed totally, failed absolutely. Not compromised by intelligence operations, not by Mossad operations, not by Israeli intelligence activities, not by foreign espionage campaigns, not by any intelligence interference. Not compromised despite extensive operations, despite sophisticated activities, despite professional campaigns, despite systematic interference, despite continuous attempts. Not compromised because we detected the operations, because we monitored the activities, because we documented the campaigns, because we stopped the interference, because we ended the attempts. Our sovereignty remains uncompromised, remains whole, remains complete, remains total. Not compromised by intelligence operations because we protected it, because we defended it, because we preserved it. Not compromised despite 3 years of operations, despite network of 12 agents, despite systematic intelligence gathering, despite continuous operational activity, despite professional espionage. Not compromised because we controlled the situation, because we managed the threat, because we contained the damage, because we prevented the compromise, because we maintained our sovereignty. Not compromised because the operations didn't achieve their objectives, didn't accomplish their goals, didn't fulfill their missions, didn't succeed in their purposes. The operations failed to compromise our sovereignty, failed completely, failed totally, failed absolutely. Not undermined by espionage networks, not by David Cohen's network, not by Mossad networks, not by any foreign spy networks, not by any intelligence networks, not undermined despite existence of networks, despite operation of networks, despite activity of networks, despite efforts of networks, despite attempts of networks. Not undermined because we penetrated the networks, because we monitored the networks, because we documented the networks, because we arrested the networks, because we eliminated the networks. Our sovereignty remains not undermined, remains strong, remains stable, remains secure, not undermined by espionage networks because we protected it, because we defended it, because we preserved it. Not undermined despite network of 12 agents, despite 3 years of network operations, despite systematic intelligence collection, despite continuous espionage activities, despite professional spy operations. Not undermined because we knew about the network, because we watched the network, because we documented the network, because we controlled the network, because we destroyed the network. Not undermined because the network didn't achieve its objectives, didn't accomplish its goals, didn't fulfill its missions, didn't succeed in its purposes. The network failed to undermine our sovereignty, failed completely, failed totally, failed absolutely. Our sovereignty that we fought for through decades of struggle, through years of resistance, through generations of sacrifice, fought for against colonialism that tried to deny our sovereignty, against imperialism that tried to suppress our sovereignty, against neo-colonialism that tried to undermine our sovereignty, against exploitation that tried to compromise our sovereignty, against subordination that tried to violate our sovereignty, fought for with blood of our ancestors, with sacrifice of our forebears, with courage of our heroes, with determination of our martyrs, fought for through liberation movements, through independence struggles, through sovereignty campaigns, through freedom fights, fought for and won through struggle, won through sacrifice, won through courage, won through determination, won through commitment, won our sovereignty, earned our sovereignty, achieved our sovereignty, sovereignty that is ours, that belongs to us, that we possess, that we control, that we exercise, sovereignty that we fought for, that we earned, that we won, that we will never surrender, never compromise, never abandon, never betray. Sovereignty that we fought for is sovereignty we protect, is sovereignty we defend, is sovereignty we preserve, is sovereignty we maintain, that we died for in wars of independence, in battles for freedom, in struggles for sovereignty, in fights for self-determination. Our ancestors died for this sovereignty, gave their lives for our independence, sacrificed their existence for our freedom, offered their blood for our self-determination, died fighting colonialism, died resisting imperialism, died opposing neocolonialism, died defending sovereignty, died protecting independence, died preserving freedom, died ensuring self-determination, died so we could have sovereignty, so we could enjoy independence, so we could experience freedom, so we could exercise self-determination. Died, and their sacrifice demands we protect what they died for, demands we defend what they sacrificed for, demands we preserve what they gave their lives for, demands we maintain what they fought for. Their sacrifice demands we never surrender sovereignty, never compromise independence, never abandon freedom, never betray self-determination. Their sacrifice demands we protect sovereignty against all threats, defend independence against all challenges, preserve freedom against all dangers, maintain self-determination against all interference. That we died for is sovereignty we honor, is sovereignty we respect, is sovereignty we protect, is sovereignty we defend, is sovereignty we preserve. That we protect actively, protect continuously, protect systematically, protect professionally, protect through vigilance, through awareness, through monitoring, through detection, through response. Protect our sovereignty against all threats, against foreign spies, against intelligence operations, against espionage networks, against covert interference, against sovereignty violations. Protect through our security services, through our intelligence agencies, through our counterintelligence operations, through our government institutions, through our national commitment. Protect like we protected against David Cohen, like we detected his presence, like we monitored his operations, like we documented his crimes, like we arrested his network, like we prosecuted his violations. Protect through professional intelligence work, through effective counterintelligence, through capable security operations, through vigilant monitoring, through systematic documentation. Protect continuously. Protect persistently, protect permanently, protect because sovereignty is precious, because independence is valuable, because freedom is essential, because self-determination is fundamental. Protect because we fought for it, because we died for it, because we earned it, because it's ours. Our sovereignty that belongs to our people, not to government, not to leaders, not to officials, not to institutions, to our people, to Burkinabe citizens, to every man, woman, and child in Burkina Faso, to every person who lives here, who works here, who calls this home, belongs to them, is theirs, is their possession, is their inheritance, is their birthright, is their legacy. Sovereignty that belongs to our people, that is held in trust for them, that is protected for them, that is defended for them, that is preserved for them. Belongs to our people means we protect it for them. We defend it for them. We preserve it for them. We maintain it for them. We ensure it for them. Not for ourselves, not for government, not for leaders, not for officials, for our people. For their benefit, for their security, for their future, for their dignity, for their freedom. Belongs to our people means their sovereignty, their independence, their freedom. Their self-determination, their dignity, belongs to them, is theirs, will always be theirs. We are merely guardians, merely protectors, merely defenders, merely preservers. Sovereignty belongs to our people,